Welcome to our November Coffee Connect. This is just a reminder that our NeMTSS Media Library has all the recordings from previous Coffee Connects and other videos that we've taken. So it's a great resource for you to use or to share with those around you. And this month, our focus is on continuous improvement. And our team, SEBL Specialists, is here. So we have me, I'm Mackenzie Rydell. I serve Region 1, which is ESUs 4, 5, and 6, and also LPS. And I'll let the others introduce themselves.
I'm Emily Arkfeld, serving Region 2, ESUs 2, 3, and OPS.
Jill Gunther, I serve Region 3, so that is ESUs 1, 7, and 8. And then we also have Chandra and Sarah, and I think that, oh, Sarah is on.
I just hopped on. Sorry, I had the wrong link on my calendar, so not a way to start the morning. I'm Sarah Gentry. I'm from Region 5. I cover ESU 13, 15, and 16.
And then Chandra serves Region 4, so ESU 9, 10, 11, and 17. So we want to welcome you today and just reminisce a little bit on the previous long weekend we had about the food that you most indulged in over Thanksgiving. So you can either unmute or you can drop it in the chat. We'll just show.
Oh, it's right off the top, pumpkin pie.
Whipped cream or no whipped cream, Nancy?
I like it both ways, and I even like it with ice cream.
Ooh, nice.
Yes.
Stuffing, mashed potatoes, and gravy. Got 2 votes for that. Okay. I like the Jell-O. I'm not into the typical Thanksgiving food, so anything with Jell-O is my jam.
I ate all the things, but I would say the one that I continue to go back for is the green bean casserole because I never have it any other time.
All right, well, we have a Padlet as usual. It's the same Padlet every time. We just go through and put in some new resources, and then we make a separate Padlet linked within for each Coffee Connect. And so if you're looking for certain resources from the continuous improvement one, after this one's done, it'll have its own thing with all the resources and the slides and the recording available. We just got to vote for all the desserts. So that is a great food to indulge in. All right, continuous improvement. Thinking about this, excellence is not a destination. It's a continuous journey that never ends. In schools, we're always working to be better and to grow, and it's not necessarily somewhere that we get to and we just celebrate where we're at and we stay there. We always are looking for ways we can continuously improve. And as we know with education, things are changing, so there's always room for growth. And social emotional behavioral learning. I think most of you have probably heard this definition by now. But it is the systematic process of fostering social and emotional skills among students and adults in order to create safe and supportive learning environments for positive behavioral and mental health outcomes of all. We include those adults in there because we think it's important that our adults need to be sustained, well taken care of, have these skills to use for themselves and also to model for students to help them learn and grow. These social emotional skills are teachable. We can teach them at young ages. We can teach them at old ages. It's kind of also in that continuous improvement category where we're always learning and growing in our social emotional behavioral well-being. And we use those 5 CASEL competencies: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationships, and social awareness. And we know that these skills help support having those expectations school-wide, classroom-wide. They help support wellness, and they help support some of those career readiness or employability skills that we're looking for our older learners in our public school system. But it's also kind of that vice versa of we also need those expectations, and we need some of those wellness reminders and practices and some of those career readiness standards or employability things to strive for to help continue growing in our social emotional behavioral skills. So when we think about continuous improvement, Nebraska MTSS, we truly believe that this is kind of the vehicle towards continuous improvement. So our definition, MTSS is a continuous improvement process. It's a framework designed through the lens of continuous improvement. And we use MTSS to guide schools and districts and educators to help support all students, every student, to have access to learning experiences to enhance their educational outcomes. And now we have a cute little video that will play about continuous improvement.
Schools that implement social and emotional learning school-wide understand that achieving enduring success requires a system for continuous improvement. By establishing a structured ongoing process to collect, reflect on, and use data to inform decisions, schools are able to advance their overall SEL implementation as well as adjust their strategies in a timely and responsive manner.
When thinking about continuous improvement, what we're really talking about here is setting goals for what we want to accomplish and then putting a plan in place to achieve those goals. We want to reflect along the way to see if we're making progress towards those goals, and if we're experiencing challenges, how might we adjust our plans so that we stay focused on our outcomes.
For continuous improvement to truly be systemic within a school, we first need to make sure that we're honoring the fact that there is not a one-size-fits-all SEL implementation model or strategy. There are a variety of continuous improvement models. We think of continuous improvement really using three basic phases: organizing, implementing, and then improving. And this is cyclical, so we do this over and over again.
These stages of the improvement cycle are practiced in many school districts across the country, including in the West Carrollton School District south of Dayton, Ohio. One of West Carrollton's core beliefs is continuous improvement is an institutionalized habit.
At the building level, when we're looking at SEL data, every teacher needs to be involved in that process. It's very similar to parallel to academics. If you want teachers to be invested in teaching phonics across the building, we're going to look at together as a team at phonics data. Same with SEL, it's no different. If we want our teachers to be on board with teaching SEL standards and skills, they need to be invested in everyone looking at the data, dig deep, so they can tailor the lessons to support their individual student needs.
I think that video, we cut it.
Schools that
It's actually 9 minutes long, and it kind of goes into that school's journey of continuous improvement around social emotional learning. If you're wanting to watch all of it, but just some great reminders that it's really creating a plan, being intentional about that plan. You heard them talk about data a lot and including all of their stakeholders, having some of that shared teaming, and really involving everybody in the school. Because continuous improvement is a school-wide approach. It's something that everyone in the school building should be aware of, should know about, because as a collective school, that's how we're going to grow and to meet those goals. So continuous improvement is ongoing. We already talked about this. It's always going on, and it allows districts to use data to pick some priority areas, to set some goals, and to set some actions and implement some actions to achieve those goals. Again, it's school-wide. It should be a systematic process with planning, implementing, and evaluating some of those action steps, looking at data continuously to see some improvement in learning and growth, and then continuously coming back to it to review any progress that's been made or any adjustments that need to be had. And today, I know we're SEBL specialists. We specialize in that social emotional behavioral area. But we just want to send a reminder out that thinking about continuous improvement shouldn't just be around that social emotional learning, social emotional behavior learning implementation. It should really be through the lens of NeMTSS, not siloed out into different, I guess, content areas or topics. And one way that we can support continuous improvement in our state is by using the continuous improvement plan template, or the SIP template. It is, I guess, kind of relatively new. It's over a year old at this point, but it's a nice master document that has all the information you need to help support a continuous improvement plan. You can copy and paste your data from your schools in there. You can delete sections if they're not applicable to your school or district. And it's also a shared document, so you get all the stakeholders that need to look at it, can have their eyes on it. You can edit it and change it as you go through the continuous improvement process through the years. And if you already have a template similar to this, don't necessarily feel like you need to scrap it, but we do like to encourage using this template because it is comprehensive, and it was created in alignment with the accreditation office, the NDE, our NeMTSS leaders. There was a lot of eyes on this to be created, so it can help narrow down the number of documents we're having to do for our continuous improvement and accreditation. So why is continuous improvement important? We kind of talked on this a little bit with our NeMTSS definition, but really our goal of continuous improvement is for the students. We want to ensure that every student has access to the learning experiences and environments that enhance their educational outcomes. So we want to make sure that we're considering all students and not just maybe those learners that learning is easy or they learn in a typical environment. We really want to support all learners of all needs across all of our building. And thinking about not having all of these new things to go on, but when we really see that growth of continuous improvement, we want to be wise and identify a couple goals that we can work on and stay focused on to really hit those action steps. And when doing continuous improvement and systems work, we always want to think back to implementation science, just because we know that this work is big work and it's hard work and it takes endurance and it takes just knowing where you are and where you're wanting to go. And so we think of these stages of implementation, which are exploration, installation, and initial implementation, elaborating on that implementation and full implementation. And as we adopt new things and we might set new goals and we're trying to build out our system in different areas, we really want to think that we can't get it all done in a year. We can't get it all done right now, but we need to think about the stages and phases that we might be in of exploring, figuring things out before you jump into implementing things, implementing a little bit, really building up that infrastructure, making sure people know what they're doing, people's voices are heard, and then that will set you up for more success when you are implementing initially. Usually we start with implementing around that core, that universal, all people, all students. And then we might dive a little bit deeper into some of those targeted and intensified supports. And then, as always through the process, we're continuously improving to make our systems more efficient and to reach those needs of all.
Thanks, Mackenzie.
Thank you.
So Mackenzie has talked about that this is an ongoing process. We're not working on implementation for a few years and then we're going back to look at our data and then improving from there. So yes, that's part of the puzzle, but also we are doing this on an ongoing basis. And so this was a nice graphic to kind of show what that might look like in a year's time. So in the spring and in the summer, we are doing some of that organizing. We're making sure we've got our goals set. They are aligning with our vision and mission of what our school is or our district is if we're going district-wide. We're determining those action steps towards those goals, and then really identifying what data do we need, what data do we have access to, is there any data that's missing, how do we get that? So really just building like what is going to be our process for doing this. And then we roll out in the fall right away, we start implementing that. And then we're always coming back when our teams are meeting monthly or more than monthly. That's the big ask, but at least monthly. They're reviewing the data, they're making, they're reflecting on it, they're making adjustments as they see fit. And then when we get back to the spring again, we're going to figure out how do we improve on that. So we're going to look at our data again. We're going to be like, where were we really rocking at this? We have to celebrate those small wins, because it can get really, like Mackenzie said, it can get daunting in doing this work. It is long-term work. It is ongoing. It's a big ask to move school systems. So when we see progress and we see that we have reached some of our goals and completed some of our action steps, we need to make sure we're celebrating that. But then also looking at, are there areas that maybe we didn't do as great in, or some gaps that we're missing, or some barriers we still have? And so reflecting on that. And then again, rolling back into the, okay, now we're setting our goals, we're determining our action steps. And it's that ongoing process of figuring out where we want to go, how we're going to get there, doing the work, reflecting on the work, and then continuing on that process. This next document is a great resource as well. So I think this one this one is for superintendents, but I think it's just great for any administrator, any team. There's a lot of things that go into implementation, and there's a lot of things you can be prioritizing, but you have to really look at what's your data, what's your goal, what's your needs, and prioritize those areas. And so this is a nice breakdown of that. So the right hand side is you might consider prioritizing this win, and then that connects with the section. So like the number 7, lead adult SEL culture. So if your staff morale is an issue, you're about to launch a program, so maybe you were able to adopt and purchase a curriculum that you're about to roll out. You yourself as an administrator wants to understand deepen your understanding of SEL, or really incorporate it into your leadership style. So then maybe you need to prioritize that adult SEL culture and climate in your schools. If you are just kind of in the process, if you are new coming in to a district, so really maybe bringing together that shared vision. And so identifying the values of your school system, your district, coming up with that shared vision to roll out, or to you've got maybe some challenges with some buy-in or something. So this is really great just to kind of identify where are we at, what are some of our barriers, what's going on, and then helping to identify some of those priority areas as well, in conjunction, like if you're doing the SIP template, in conjunction with what you're pulling out of your priority areas, and that also based on data and things like that. So then who should be involved in this continuous improvement? Again, if you've been with us for any of our NeMTSS things, you have probably seen our teaming structure. And so this is just that reminder of those wide teams, and that the communication is back and forth. And so we have our district leadership team who is really working to align things with a strategic plan, if you have one, to look at the greater system work that is going on. They're doing their continuous improvement. And then maybe our school leadership teams, and maybe that is the same as our collaborative teams, or maybe, depending on the size of your district, some of these, you might not have 4 separate teams. Some of these will have some overlap. Some of these will be combined just based on your numbers and the capacity. But the school leadership teams are working on that smaller level. So what's going on in our school? What are our needs? How are we implementing this? And then we have our collaborative teams working again just on a more specific focus, and our student support teams really on that individual student, wrapping around services for them, identifying what extra supports they might need. And so in that district leadership team, when we're thinking about continuous improvement, they really are the large charge of that. They are using data to design and adjust the district's system, ensuring the success of every student, like Mackenzie was talking about, elevating student, caregiver, staff voice, all of those things. And then again, that school leadership team is to implement that school plan, school-wide, for NeMTSS, for SEBL. You know, ideally, we want those teams to be working to not be siloed out. We want those teams to be one team working in all of these areas. We understand also that that's not always applicable in all of the districts and the schools as well. And so whatever that looks like, but as long as our teams are not working in silos and they are sharing that communication, they are coming together when they need to come together, when decisions need to be made, when data needs to be shared, all of those kinds of things. So when you're thinking about team composition, we always want it to include a building administrator. We need someone who can make those hard decisions and those needed decisions. And so when we have a lot of great voices on the team and experience and knowledge and ideas, and then, you know, they're trying to make progress, but they're like, oh, but wait, we have to wait for approval on this, or we have to take this back to our administrator. So as often as the administrator can be a part of the team, be present, we know that's not always applicable, which is why we want it to be led by someone other than the administrator, because we want always that leader to be able to be there to lead the team, and an administrator there to make some decisions. We want to make sure it represents both the school and the community. And so again, that might look different in your buildings, in your district. It could include a student, it could include a parent, a community member. I have seen where some teams have a staff member who represents a piece of the staff, but also it represents the parent aspect. And that is great. If you can get someone who's not a staff member who is a parent, that's even better, because I think even our staff who are parents, they still have some of that insider knowledge as staff members. And so it's hard to separate that out of what information would I be getting solely as a parent versus what information do I have access to as a staff member also. And so getting a member who is just a parent, who is on that outside of like, what information do I have coming to me as a family stakeholder? What information do I feel is missing? I think is really valuable to a team. So understandably, time is hard. Getting parents to do that, it's also hard to open your teams up and your data and your information to that. But the more you can do that, the better. PTAs can help with some of that as well. You get members that are participating in that. And then again, meets once a month minimally. Again, time is hard, especially if you have multiple teams and multiple responsibilities. And so really, the hope is that whichever team you have that is focusing on SEBL, they take on that responsibility of what data to collect, to monitor progress, and they invite the other voices to help reflect on that data, examining and addressing inequities, and then bringing together the school community to celebrate those successes like we talked about. So sharing out the information and the data that they have collected and analyzed. And so sharing that out school-wide, these are our successes. Maybe here are some areas we need to make some adjustment and a plan to continually improve so that everyone has a voice. Everyone gets to see the progress that's been made, and have a voice in what adjustments perhaps we need to make in the future. And so when you're pulling together your team, you want to make sure that you have shared beliefs among the team. You build some norms into that so that your team meetings are a safe place to come and to be collaborative and to be vulnerable and to talk about really what's going on. Identifying those roles and responsibilities. If you're large enough, having some backup people for some of those roles and responsibilities so that it just can keep rolling and you don't get to a meeting, you're like, oh yeah, Sarah had to leave early today. Does anyone want to take on this? Or maybe we skip this piece today because Sarah's not here. So always having a backup person, having a clear, clean agenda so that everyone knows where it's at, knows where the information is at, and is stored. You have a process for decision making, and there are some great examples of that in the framework document that is linked on there. And that might be consensus, majority rules, hierarchy, 5 to 5, any of those kinds of things to come to consensus. And then making sure that you are updating your action plan, whether that's through the SIP template or in your agenda, whatever that might look like, but a place that you are identifying what your actions are and then tracking your progress on those as well. Okay, and so how, it's all kind of tied together, but we get to the how do we do this continuous improvement? And Mackenzie just briefly touched on it when she defined what continuous improvement is. It's that process of, prioritizing and action steps and all of those things. And so we have our NeMTSS problem solving model here, which is our 5-step process. If you've been with NeMTSS for a while, it was a 4-step process for a while. We went back to the 5-step process to pull out all of those pieces, to be intentional with those. And so it goes through identifying what is the problem, analyzing why it's occurring, coming up with that plan. What can we do to solve this? The implementation steps, so the who, what, where, when, how are we going to do this? And then reflecting that continuous improvement. What did and did not work? And then again, it's that cyclical process of going through all of this. And so we have our NeMTSS framework workshops, and we wanted to, there's some handouts there to help you through that process also, if this is something that is new to you, or you just want some guided templates to work through. Those are linked in there for you also. They are great resources. Okay. We have, in the last year and a half, 2 years, have really revamped our NeMTSS workshops to meet the needs of our schools and our districts. And so this helps go through all of the steps, all of the process of implementing, reflecting, continuously improving your MTSS system, or that's redundant, but multi-tiered system of support. So we have our explore workshop, our organize, examine core, and examine tier 2 and tier 3. And all of these can be chunked into smaller pieces, again, to meet the needs. And so if this is, if you are working on building your system, if you are working on improving your system, if you just want to get a refresher in some areas, our regional support leads and our teams are here to help through that process. So if any of these areas look like something of like, oh yeah, I've got districts, or I work in a district that needs some extra support in this, or we're getting started in this, or you are working with districts, if you are an ESU member, that you're like, gosh, I know that they really could use this, that is, we would love to have them go through. So I wanted to share that with everyone in case you guys have not seen what our new workshops look like and what that process is. And so when we've got our teams again, and then data, it was really the biggest piece, is a big piece of what we're doing in continuous improving, is looking at our data on a regular basis, reflecting on our data, setting those action steps. And so this comes directly from our framework document also. So what our student data might look like, it's that student learning and well-being data. What do we have access to? Especially when we think about social emotional behavioral learning, are we doing a screener? What does that screening data look like? If we're doing interventions and supports, how's our progress monitoring on that? What do our grades look like? Our attendance, our health, and so whether that's nurse office visits, counseling office visits, what's our office referral data look like? Is it high? Is it low? Are we, where we think we should be? Do we have access to, and are we using our student perceptual data? Are we doing culture and climate surveys? Are we doing any engagement surveys? Are we doing any student feedback forms or things like that? And then what are our demographics like? And so are our outcomes matching our demographics? Are there gaps and barriers? Are there any inequities that we need to address? So really looking at all of that student data, getting the full picture and not just a couple small pieces. And we also want to make sure that we are including any adult data in the mix as well. And so our process data, again, that fidelity, are there needs a needs assessment we can be sharing, any gap analysis, and then perceptual data for our adults as well. Are they filling out the culture and climate? What's their, learning and well-being looking like? Or what's our staff attendance rates? What is our turnover rate, using again all of that data, core belief or NeMTSS core belief survey. So looking at our adults too, and making sure that data is a part of what we are looking at and incorporating into our decision-making process. And then just some resources to help, as again, that SIP template is huge, but it really is all the information. You can include all of your data. You can pull out your priority areas. You can do all of that in one document so that you don't have this one, owned by this person over here in our Google Drive, and this is floating around. But these are some things that you might be doing in your school or your district also that can help inform some of that. So if you use a PBIS framework, perhaps you're doing the tiered fidelity inventory or the SAS, that might give you some of that data also. So where are we succeeding? Where might we have some room for growth? How can we build that in? The benchmarks of quality for our early childhood. We have our social emotional behavioral learning rubric out there to show this is an area we are rocking on implementation, but that maybe this is an area that we have some room to grow in, and maybe an action plan around that. So all of these resources are out there to help build into just the data you're looking at and your action planning and your goal setting. And then when we are, thinking of the problem solving process, this is a nice visual of just really getting to the roots of what's going on. And so the analogy is basically if you so your symptoms, so what we're seeing up here, perhaps what we're seeing in our schools, or when we are this sick, what we're seeing is that we're feeling achy, weak, or tired. So the symptoms are that result or the outcome of the problem. What you see as the problem. So when we think about behavior in kids, these are those external behaviors that we're seeing. And then we get to that problem. And so in this, they're saying, so we're feeling achy, weak, and tired because maybe we have a fever. And so if we just treat the fever, if we treat the problem with ibuprofen or something like that, we're missing the fact that actually the fever is caused by an infection, which would be that root cause. And so when we're going through the problem solving process, we really want to dive down and get to the root of the problem. And there are some great resources out there to help kind of ask that. I think we've shared before, ask that why. So we see a symptom, why is that? And then we get to that next level, and then why is that? And so really trying to work down to the root of that. Instead of just trying to, manage the symptoms or even manage the problems. But if we continue to do that, that's how we just overload our system, because we're not really getting to what is really going on and fixing it there. And so we're using up all of our time, our people, our efforts up there at the symptoms and the problems. So some nice information there. I think that's it for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. And like Emily was saying, with that root cause analysis, that really is what helps guide our continuous improvement, because we are drilling down to really find that root cause. And then that helps us to identify our goals and then those steps to reach those goals. So in addition to the resources that Emily mentioned, we also have a couple others for you as well. One of them being these evidence-based strategies tip webinars that our regional lead team put together. They have a variety of different webinars available on our YouTube channel. So Mackenzie shared that as the very first slide during our time together today. But we wanted to really call out specifically the database decision-making one, because it really does walk through that root cause analysis and going through each of those steps to really help identify those root causes. And so they did a great job putting that together. We wanted to call that out as a resource. We also have another one on our YouTube channel using SEBL data to problem solve, which really kind of walks through some of those steps as well, being able to just kind of walk through that root cause analysis. So some other just pieces for you guys to maybe come back to later. Some questions to reflect on. So again, when we're thinking about that continuous improvement process, really working through each of those steps of the problem solving model that Emily had shared earlier, we had a couple handouts with some great just reflection questions to just help guide teams through each of those steps as well, kind of help guide those discussions. And these are just some great questions to reflect on as well. We also have a link at the bottom of this slide. So this rapid learning cycles for continuous improvement. And it does a nice job of kind of identifying some of those pieces of what do we want to really dig into before the meeting? What are some things to put together? What are our goals of our team? What do we want to do during the meeting? So really thinking about those steps to review the data. Looking at action steps, and then continuing to really discuss that progress of those goals as well. And then it also goes through just developing those next action steps as well. And it has a nice just kind of flow chart on that link as well. Of just kind of guiding you through, like, if we answered no to this, if we answered yes to this, just kind of next steps for that. So another great resource as well. Other just pieces to think about. So those questions to reflect on, do we see an increase or an improvement relative to where we started? Emily mentioned those small wins earlier. Just a really important piece of that continuous improvement process as well. If we don't see that change or that decline, what might have happened? Again, really thinking about that root cause analysis, like what is underlying here? Is change happening at the rate that we're aiming for? If not, what can we do to continue to help increase or decrease depending on what we're looking at there? Maybe some factors, just really digging into some factors that are contributing to the progress towards our goal. And then what factors are presenting challenges to that progress as well. How have we tried to address, like what steps have we already taken? What can we take moving forward? So again, some great questions to really bring into those team meetings, have some reflections on, and just kind of help to guide our meetings there as well. When we're thinking about that continuous improvement for SEBL, so we know we have to have, when we're thinking about our goals for continuous improvement, we have to have that academic goal, at least one academic goal. But we also obviously want to dig into that social, emotional, behavioral learning as well. And if that's a need that we're seeing in our district, we want to be sure to identify that as one of our goal or our priority areas as well. And so we wanted to just give, there's lots of districts across Nebraska that have specific social, emotional, behavioral learning goals. This one actually comes from Stan Community Schools. So we wanted to share this one as a way that they identified just kind of those underlying problems. They determined that they had a need in the area of social, emotional, behavioral learning. So they identified that they wanted to support that social and emotional growth of students and really focusing on that whole child approach. And then they identified those expectations for that student learning. And so just to kind of give you an idea of some of those pieces that they identified there. So they really broke it down by each of the 5 competencies and wanted to have some key action steps for those expectations for student learning. So really looking at acquiring and applying the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop those healthy identities. So really that self-awareness piece, being able to manage emotions and achieve personal and collective goals. So really that self-management piece, feeling and showing empathy for others, establishing and maintaining supportive relationships, and then making responsible and caring decisions. So those next 3, so really thinking about those relationship skills, that responsible decision making. And then that 3rd one is that social awareness there too. So just a nice way to just kind of break down what the goal is and then what those expectations for student learning are. So again, just one example. We also have another link that actually comes from Baltimore City Schools, which does a nice job too of just kind of breaking down and identifying a continuous improvement goal around social, emotional, behavioral learning. So we've mentioned this a couple times, but it just really drives home that importance of having those celebrations for those small wins, engineering those early successes. And so ensuring that we're really identifying those small wins, those small gains all along the way, because it is such a process. Mackenzie talked earlier about that implementation science, and that we really want to identify and celebrate those successes along the way, so that it seems like it's more in reach, right? We want to identify like where we're going along the way. When we're celebrating those small wins, those small successes, it really helps to create that hope within our team, which really is essential to any change effort, to really continue to make that progress. It helps make advances and efforts just more visible, those little steps along our path. And then it helps to demystify that journey. So it helps us to identify like, where are we going next? Okay, we accomplished this. What's next? It helps just really bring it within sight. And then really even identifying what those small wins or what those small victories actually look like. Because we know sometimes that like larger goal that we want to eventually work towards, sometimes it seems like it's not within reach. It's kind of out of our control. But if we're celebrating those small wins along the way, it helps make it just more realistic, right? It really helps to instill those feelings of confidence, those feelings of pride for our staff, and for those teaming structures as well. And so again, remembering to really celebrate those successes. So this actually comes from, we have the Kentucky NeMTSS newsletter. So we have a variety of different just NeMTSS newsletters that sometimes we will identify some different resources and information from. And so this just kind of had a nice overview of some benefits to celebrating those successes, those small wins when we're thinking about that continuous improvement process. And so ensuring that we are acknowledging, we're appreciating that hard work, that dedication of our teams in that improvement process. We want to help to boost that morale when we're thinking about that climate culture. If we're celebrating those small wins, it helps just to just instill that positive climate and culture as well. Validating or that reinforcement. We know that those are important pieces for our students, and helping to improve student behavior. Of course, it is always also important for our staff as well. It helps boost that morale, like we said, helps validate and reinforce what we're doing together as a team. It helps us also identify like what's going well and what do we want to continue to work towards. It helps encourage those initiatives. It helps generate that enthusiasm and support for those ongoing efforts as well. And so just to kind of close out when we're thinking about those small wins, celebrating those successes, just a nice quote there too. So synergy is what happens when 1 + 1 = 10, or at 100, or even 1,000. It's a profound result when 2 or more respectful human beings determine to go beyond their preconceived ideas to meet a great challenge. So just a nice quote to just kind of bring it all together there as well. And with that, just a few reminders for everybody. So our December 13th Coffee Connect is coming up as well. So right around the corner. So it'll be the same Zoom link. If you have not registered, we can certainly put that in the chat as well. But we will be talking a little bit about decision making during our December Coffee Connect. We also have just our link in our registration is on the next slide here. So if you do need that, that is here for that December Coffee Connect. And then we also have our Tier 1 classroom coming up on December 5th as well. So if that is something that you're interested in getting your team registered for, there's more information on those links. And then with that, we have our exit ticket. So as always, we appreciate any and all feedback that you're able to share, or potentially maybe topics for this next semester that you guys are interested in hearing more about. So again, our December 13th Coffee Connect is on decision-making criteria. And if you need a certificate of attendance, that is also on that exit ticket. You can request one of those. And then to end our time together today, so our optimistic closure, really thinking about just in this time when we're kind of gearing down in this semester and thinking about that appreciation, even thinking about those small wins, celebrating those successes. We want you guys, or we challenge you guys to send a shout out of appreciation to someone. Maybe it's a colleague, a friend that just helps you get through each day. Maybe it's a student that you want to send a shout out to. Maybe it's an administrator or leader. But that would be our challenge to you, is just to identify that person and send out that note of gratitude, that thank you, that shout out to them to let them know what you appreciate them for. And then we have our contact information there. Again, if you guys have any questions, need any additional resources, please reach out. Thank you for joining us this morning.